All right. So the last or the first little demo here, I just went through queries that involved one criteria, whether they're certain age or the Green Party or whatever. If you want to do more than one criteria, it's a little bit more involved, and that's what I want to do next. Ands and ors. People who live in New York and have premium cable, something like that. So let me just close out of all these queries, and I'll start fresh here. So I'll go create, query design, pick the table that I'm interested in, households. Households in New York that have premium cable. So obviously I'm going to want HHID because I want to be able to identify which households those are. I'm going to need the state and then premium cable, which is down here someplace. There it is. Okay. So I put New York here. Okay, and since it's an equals, I don't have to put the equal sign there. We'll just let Access do that for us. And premium cable, that's coded yes, no, Y, N. So we can just put a Y there. Okay. So if you're going to read this, if you see multiple criteria on the same line, there's an implied and between them. So what we're looking for here are households in New York and have premium cable. And if we wanted to look for households where the adults living there are married, then we could just add that field here too, and it would be just another Y for yes there. All right. So as you're looking across this row, there's going to be an and here, and then there'll be like another and here. Just that's how you'd read that, and this, and that, and that. So for that to be true, all parts of that have to be true, and we got that stuff. All right. So that's how and works. Or is a little bit different. So let me just clear. Let's say, well, let's just start with something simpler here. I'm going to delete these two criteria under premium cable and married. Let's start with this. I want households in New York or Pennsylvania. Or. So if you noticed over here in this criteria area, there's an or down here. So if you put criteria on separate lines, then there's an applied or between the lines. So down here, I would put PA for Pennsylvania. And I don't know if I wanted to, or Connecticut, then I would just put that on third line, CT, and so on. Okay? So if you're looking down, something like that, it's or. So is that clear to everybody about how ors and ands work here? Okay. Now, let's ask a slightly more complex question. I'm looking for people in one of those three states that have premium cable and the adults are married. Okay. So New York and premium and married, or Pennsylvania and premium and married, or Connecticut and premium and married. Is that clear? So to do that, then New York and, so that would imply that this goes on the same line here. So we would just do that here. We put a Y back in here. And I said and married. So that deals with New York and married and have premium cable. And now if I were to run it this way, I would get those people plus anybody who lived in Pennsylvania and Connecticut, regardless of whether they have premium cable or not. Does that make sense? Everybody with me on that part? So again, if I want just people who are married and have premium cable and from one of these three states, then I would have to fill this thing in again here. Oops. And I'd have to do the same for Connecticut. So again, if you just read across, and every time you jump from one column to another, there's just insert an and into your mind there. So it would be New York and premium equals yes, and married equals yes. And if you skip down to another line, then there's an or there, the parentheses, or, and so on and so forth. So that's how you do ands and ors. Now, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. If you want to get rid of one of these columns, you can just highlight, go up right above where the field name is. There's that little area right above it. It'll turn that, if you click there, it'll turn the whole thing black. Then you can just hit the delete key or cut it if you want to get rid of that stuff. Okay. Let's say I want to pull together a list of households in, I don't know, New Jersey that we can call. We have some sort of marketing campaign we want to do, and we want to call people in New Jersey. Okay. So we definitely want to check that can call, because we don't want to call people and get in trouble, because if the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, finds out about this, we can get whacked with a very heavy fine. So we're going to try to be legitimate about this. So we would want can call, and then we're going to want their area code and their phone number, like that. And under can call, we're definitely going to want to put a Y there, and we'll let Access fill in the rest for us. And if I run this, I get this. Now this is close to what we really want, but there's no reason to send this down to our call center if they don't have a phone number, right? They can't do anything with it. So we're going to sort of trim this list down so we just have people that we can call that have a legitimate phone number, that have a phone number, right? Okay, now, this cell here, this value here, actually it's called in database, it's called null. We say that has a null value. Think of it as being like a blank. There's nothing. If there was a space in there, that's a space, because a space is a character like any other. This is a null value. It means there's nothing in there. Okay. So what we want to do is get rid of all the nulls from this. And so to modify our query, I'll just go back into it. And under area code, if we, for example, somehow we don't have the area code, we want not null, but in Access you have to say is space not space null. Okay. Is not null. Okay. And then again, we're going to want to do the same under phone number, because we want, when we make this list up, we want to make sure that we have both parts of the phone number. So again, we would say here is not null. Okay. And now when we run this, we'll have a nicely trimmed up call list that, we turn this over to whoever and they can call and make the marketing pitch or whatever. All right. So if you wanted to pull out those phone numbers and say maybe you found another data vendor and you want to send off this list of clients that you have with no phone number, they can match them and maybe supply you with phone numbers. Then you would just say, if you want a list of people who don't have phone numbers, then in here, obviously, all you'd have to say is null. So when you're dealing with null, you have to have that other word is. Okay, and no quotes around null. It's a value just like true and false. Okay, so this would produce a list of phone numbers that we don't have for our households in our marketing database. And again, like I said, you can call, there's lots of different data vendors that you could try to get in touch with and see if they can supply you with a phone number. So that's null and is not null and that sort of stuff. All right, now, let's say we just want to do it on those 3 states. Let's add a 4th state. We had what? New York, Pennsylvania. What do we have? No, we had New York, New Jersey, Connecticut or something. Anyway, suppose I wanted 4 states. Well, so obviously I'd have to put state in here someplace. Okay. And if you want to rearrange these columns, you can just, again, go up right above the field name, click, and the whole thing turns black, and you can just click and drag it and drop it wherever you want. Because again, you're creating an output table. And if you want to rearrange things, you can just do it that way. Okay. So let's say we want it from 4 states: New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and Connecticut. Okay. Now we all know how to do that. We could just start off with New Jersey here, right? and then we can come down and do the next one down here, New York, and so. But then we'd have to fill all this stuff in again across there for all the. So what I want to show you next is a shortcut. There's a in operator in this set or in this list of things. If it's in that list, it's true, which means we want it. And if it's not in that list, we don't want it. So up here, instead of creating 4 lines to do this, I can just say here in open parentheses, double quote, New Jersey, double quote, and then list the other states inside of double quotes too, separated by commas. So you're just creating a list here. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, CT, close parentheses. You can also resize these columns if you want. If your formula or your criteria is too big, you can make it bigger here. Okay. So you would read that as in New York or Connecticut or, right? So that's just a quicker way of doing that than having 4 separate lines. I think it's less error prone, it's easier to understand and all that sort of stuff. So that's the in operator. Questions about that one? Okay. Now, let's add one more criteria to this. We're dealing with people whose houses are of a certain age that were built in this, or that, do I have it? Is that in there? What do I have for house? Home built, right? So we're looking for people whose homes were built in the 1970s. Okay. Now, what's in that field is just a year. It's just an integer number. It's not a date string. It's just a number. So it'll be like 1970, 1971, so on and so forth. Anyway, there's a between operator that works nicely here. So we can just pick home built. And then over here, you say between, the word between. Oops. I got to type it right. TW. Between 1970 and the word and. So between open parentheses 1970 and 1979, close parentheses. And what did I do wrong? Why does it say not between? Try that. Yeah, no parentheses. That's my mistake. Okay. Which makes it even easier to do. And that includes the 2 endpoints. So that would include 1970 and 1979. And since it's on that same line, all that other criteria applies too. So we're looking for people in certain states who we can call, who have a valid phone number, whose home was built back in the 70s. Okay. And then you can just run this baby. How about that? And nobody meets that criteria. Okay, that's a legitimate answer. It could be a legitimate answer. Sometimes, you don't have anything in the database that matches that. So there's that. All right. So questions about this stuff? Okay. So your turn. Go on to practice 2 and answer those questions. And then we'll go on to more stuff.